Are you an adventurer looking to take your hunt to the next level? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to East Meets West Hunt with your host, Beau Martonik.
All right, we're live. Curtis Zabel, welcome to the podcast, man.
What's up, dude? How's
Did
it going?
I pronounce your last name wrong or right?
No, that's right. That's right.
Okay,
Zabel.
I meant to ask you before we started recording, but I forgot, and as soon as I hit record, and I was like, man, hopefully I was saying that correctly.
No. A lot of people say Zabel actually.
Yeah.
And Zabel too, which is really dumb. But yeah, thanks for pronouncing it right.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on. It's funny, when we were talking beforehand, I was saying that I'd wanted to have you on for a while, and I hadn't really heard you on any podcast, which was interesting to me. Like I've been watching your stuff with Behind the Bow on YouTube for a long time, and yeah, you said you don't like doing them, or just, it's not like you don't like talking to people, but you just don't like talking on them. Is that correct?
I mean, yeah, I guess like I just not a big talker. I mean, so I film stuff for a living, right? So I show people stuff through video. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times when I'm talking and we're doing stuff like this, like live, I get nervous and stuff doesn't come out how I want it to come out. And then like it gets done and I'm like, why didn't I say this? Why didn't I say that? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
Like with my videos, I can put out exactly what I want to put out. I can think ahead of time, you know what I mean, and make a nice story. But whatever, it is what it is. I gotta start getting in front of the camera more, like live and doing stuff like this. So thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Put you in uncomfortable positions, and it just helps you out.
For sure.
You're actually, I'll let me get into the background a little bit of you, and I don't mean to make it too formal here, but just a little bit for the listeners, kind of who you are and what kind of makes you tick there.
Well, I currently live in Iowa. I'm from Northeast Wisconsin. I moved to Iowa a year ago, Northeast Iowa. Bow hunting is my life. That's pretty much why I moved to Iowa, to draw the resident tag every year, you know. And Northeast Iowa, I can bounce from Wisconsin, Minnesota, and hunt Iowa every year for less than $400, and I have 3 buck tags. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm in that driftless region, so it's just beautiful bluff country, huge rivers, trout rivers, and big bucks everywhere. That's kind of why I moved here. But yeah, I mean, bow hunting is my life. That's what I do. For a living, I make videos for a living. So I travel back to Wisconsin. I do some stuff in Iowa, but mainly I travel back to Wisconsin 3 or 4 times a month, shoot a bunch of stuff, come back here, edit, get all my work done, and then I'm back out in the woods doing something. So
that makes sense. So what kind of filming do you do? What type of filming do you do for your regular job?
So I own my own business filming stuff. So it's mainly a lot of real estate type stuff. But lots of different videos for social media and for them to send through email and stuff like that. Not so much. I used to do a bunch of real estate videos, like tours and all that stuff. I don't do that much anymore. It's more like promotional type stuff, some commercials. Sometimes there's film crews like in New York or whatever. They'll shoot the commercials with some of these realtors that I work with, and then I'll supply them with B-roll and stuff like that. So I was a machinist for 8 years, and I've always filmed everything. I've always filmed my bow hunts. I actually started filming stuff skateboarding when I was real young, you know. And then a girl asked me to film her wedding off of Instagram through the hunting videos, through Behind the Bow stuff she saw like quite a while ago. And she was like, "Can you film my wedding?" I'm like, "No, I'm not filming your wedding. Like, I don't film weddings. I just have this like little Canon T5i and this handy cam. You know what I mean? Like, and I wasn't really ever looking to do like video production professionally at all. And she's like, "Well, I'll pay you $2,000 to film my wedding." And I was like, "All right. I mean, I'll try, you know." So I filmed their wedding. Then it turned out actually pretty good for a one-man show. And then I started doing more weddings, and that evolved into real estate. And then I was like, well, I like making videos. I like making boring stuff look cool through video. You know what I mean? So I quit my machining job. I started doing video production on my own. And then I built that up pretty good in Appleton, in Northeast Wisconsin. And then, decided I kind of want to do my own thing. Like I quit my job to do my own or to start my own video business, but now I'm at the point where I want to like just film for myself, do my own stuff with Behind the Bow. So I'm kind of trying to make that transition from video production for other people to just doing Behind the Bow stuff.
That's awesome. And I figured that you had I think I knew a little bit from talking to you that was kind of your job, but just from the production quality that you see with Behind the Bow, it was obvious that you spend a lot of time with the camera and editing to be able to do that, because it's phenomenal. And I'm not just saying this because you're sitting here in front of me. I truly enjoy the storytelling aspect, as well as being able to see it all through I guess when you're watching the videos, you're able to kind of feel the emotion. You're able to see everything that you're discussing and talking about, and almost puts you in that place. And I think that's what's really cool about the storytelling aspect, that I feel like a lot of that has been lost in the hunting space. And I know I enjoy a whole bunch of different types of stuff. I don't consume a lot anymore just because I'm always doing it, but I've always been really big on the kind of the cinematic type stuff that still has, you know, the good storytelling behind it and everything. And I think that what you're doing there is really awesome.
I appreciate it. I mean, I don't necessarily, like, if I look back at everything I've done, I think it all is horrible, to be honest. That's just, I do that even with like video production stuff for other companies. Like, I have a hard time sending stuff out because I don't like it. You know what I mean? It's never good enough for me. And the bow hunting videos, that's even worse, because like you're trying to bow hunt, you're trying to sell film, but you want to make a really quality production. It's a hard line to, you know what I mean, jump across, because I mean, if you go too far into the filming part, it starts to seem fake and like set up shots and stuff like that. So you kind of want to ride that line of, you know, real, but you still want quality, you know? So it's tough, especially self-filming.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. And I've not done it even close to the level that you have, but I've dabbled in self-filming, and it sucks. Like, I've avoided it for as long as I possibly can, but I like the end result of having the footage and seeing it and being able to relive it. And I just can't at this point in what I do. I'm not able to afford to have a guy that's with me all the time filming. So it's like, all right, if I'm going to capture this stuff and show it, like I need to learn how to do it myself. But, you know, I told this story on the podcast before, but just recently, this past year, I was so pumped. I finally thought I had self-filmed me actually shooting a deer. Instead of normally I leave the camera in the bag and I shoot one and then I just tell the rest of it. But I had it up, didn't have the camera angled. I didn't know the deer was going to come into 12 yards. I just had it sitting there, and I was like, oh, I just hit the record button. He came in, I shoot it. All you see is the deer's antlers and me at full draw and shooting. But I missed just needed it a little bit down, you know.
Did you get the him coming in at all?
Like, for I don't know, 3/4 of a second, because it's so thick in this bottom that it was just like I heard him coming, and I went to full draw before I even seen him, because I was grunting, and I just heard crashing coming. I was like, well, it's here we go. So I went to full draw and just got ready, and he popped out and just went right there and stopped at 12 yards. And I'm like, and it was perfect. He went and he fell out of sight, but I was like, holy cow, I just filmed it and he actually died right there. Like, this is awesome. And then I reviewed the footage and I'm like, yeah, damn it.
Dude, it is hard. It is hard. And especially for me, even too, like, bow hunting comes first. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
If a huge buck's coming in and my camera is not perfect or whatever, I don't care, dude. Like, I'm shooting that buck no matter what, But, just bow hunting, you have to make split-second decisions all the time, Especially in an area where you're hunting, you said it's real thick and stuff, you know what I mean? So adding a camera element to that is tough, man. You can't see them coming. All of a sudden, it's there. You got, 15 to 30 seconds approximately to get everything figured out and shoot, and, so it's tough.
And,
sure.
And there was, so it was funny, I'm working on this project for a company, and they were like, hey, can you send us a bunch of like B-roll of deer? And I'm like, I don't have much, because I was like, I don't see many deer, first of all. It's low deer density, and I rarely am able to, especially bucks. Like, I can film some does here and there because I'm not really focused on them, but I'm like, that's kind of my weak spot here is actually filming the deer. So, and even like this past year, I self-filmed the whole year. And I think it'll still tell a cool story, but I look back on it, it's like, I've got like a total of 3 deer in the whole season on camera, and it's just like, oh, well, no, that is what it is.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, especially in an area like that, you'd have to probably try to put that together. You probably have to film a bunch of stuff outside of your actual hunt, right? To get a bunch of cool B-roll and stuff to tell the story. But I mean, there's a lot of times where I don't have a lot of footage either, even being in the Midwest and stuff. I mean, I'm still hunting public land. It's tough, man, And I'm always learning. Like, I'm not the best bow hunter in the world, so it's like I don't get on that many deer, And I think a lot of people watch behind the bow videos and stuff, and they're like, man, this guy's getting on all these bucks and all this stuff, and it's like, dude, you know how much time I spent in the woods? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
that's the best stuff you're seeing. I have like hours of footage. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So, I mean, I get it.
Yeah. Well, and that's something I do appreciate, though, with the stuff that you put out, is I do feel like you get that vibe, though, of like you show the not so perfect stuff that comes along with bow hunting and the struggles. I remember the one film that you put out, I think it's called Life of a Public Land Bow Hunter. Yeah. And just like showing like just hunting here, going here, nothing, like just struggling, and then it finally comes together in the late season, and it's just like, that's so realistic. Like, that's what it is. And during this last hunting season, I was struggling bad, and people were messaging me on Instagram like, what do I do? I'm not seeing any deer. I'm like, I'm not seeing any deer either, man. Like, it's a part of it. It's just, I feel like, and I think from the little I know about you is that you're this way too. It's like, you really just got to keep grinding and just keep going and going and going and going. And if you keep working hard and doing the things, the steps, the little things that you need to do as far as discipline goes, you're eventually going to have something happen. And then it comes down to you capitalizing on it.
For sure. Yeah, dude. I mean, it's tough. And I think mentally it's one of the toughest things, especially, it's just all day. I mean, we do a lot of all day sits, and it's just like, and packing in not all the time, but some spots are just rough pack-ins, and we got all the camera gear and all that stuff. You do that over and over and over again. And I think that's what, that's a big key in finding any success, A lot of guys, and it doesn't just go with bow hunting, but shed hunting, and it's, you'll go, you'll walk 50 miles and not find an antler. I'm on like a 50-mile streak where I'm not finding anything. You know what I mean? But bow hunting though, it's just like you said, it's a grind. You just got to keep going.
Yeah. And what did you tell me the other day when we were texting that so far we're recording this at the beginning of March, and you had said that you've already walked like 250 to 300 miles since January?
Yep. I'm probably at, it's in there. It's in there. It's 260, 270 or something like that. But yeah, I mean, it's the most I've walked in any year that I've ever scouted, and I still feel like I haven't walked enough. You know what I mean? There's so much ground to cover, and between Minnesota and Wisconsin and Iowa, there's tons of public land around, and you know, some spots I'm hitting up more than once, and because I know of certain bucks in those areas, but then there's some spots that I'll go that's brand new and just try to figure it out. But yeah, I've put on a lot of miles this year, but I've also made myself a lot more time. I try to like block my days to where I'm doing 4 to 6 hours of work, like editing and stuff like that, and then I'm in the woods all the rest of the day. And I try to do that. I try to get at least 5 miles in every day, but sometimes you can't do that, you know.
You know, I think I like hearing that from you, because it's one of those things that I thought when I left my full-time job and went to do this full-time that I would just have like endless amounts of time. Well, I find that like I always want to do more, and I'm trying to do stuff. And when you're working for yourself, like, you know, it's like you always have a list of things to do. And I catch myself like just working and trying to do things. And then all of a sudden I look and it's after dark, you know, I'm just like rolling through it. And I'm like, I really need to be rigid like I was when I had a job. Like I was super rigid where like, all right, I was going to the gym at 4:30 in the morning because that's when I had time to do that. I'd go to the gym, then I'd go to work. And then after work, I'd go out in the woods until dark, and then I'd do my editing until late at night. Now I also have started to value sleep, and I'm not going to shy away from that, because like I do feel 1,000 times better than I did in the past getting 4 hours of sleep a night. But I still think there's some better time management that I can do to improve on the time I spend in the woods. Like my goal has always been, every year since 2016, I've been doing 200 miles in the spring. Like that's always my goal. And then hearing you do that, I'm like, I need to do more. Like not as like a competitive thing with you, but it's like I want to keep pushing it. And there's so many places I want to check out, and there's so much, like even just in Pennsylvania alone, I just love walking new ground and figuring it out, and it's fun.
And it's like you only have one 2023 spring. You know what I mean? Like this is the only March I have this year. You know what I mean? I better get in the freaking woods. That's how I view it. And I've kind of, over the years, I've slowly just like implemented what I want my life to be. And it sounds stupid. It really does. Like, but it started with me taking 30 days off to go bow hunting in Iowa. I hired someone, I trained someone, hired somebody. They did my work while I was gone. You know what I mean? Now this year it was reduce my workload to a point where I can do this stuff all the time. So I'm making half the amount of money that I was making. You know what I mean? But I'm also trying to transition into the bow hunting world, you know? So I'm kind of making that minimum amount to live, pay the bills, all that stuff, you know, have a little bit of cushion room there for other things. But for the most part, I'm just trying to free up as much time as possible, and then making my life the way I want it to be. Like, I want to go in the woods every day. Okay, so that means, and I want to sleep, like you said. So that means I'm going to get as much work done in like a 4-hour period as I can each day. And then I'll go in the woods, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kind of just block it out and kind of just make the life I want, you know?
Yeah. No, I think that's really cool. And one thing I want to say I remember, did you do the 75 hard program?
Yeah, I did. Yep.
What did you think of that? Did that help you in any way, or what was your thoughts on that?
I mean, it was awesome when I did it. It was hard for sure, you know? But like one thing I'm really pissed off about is like kind of as soon as I got done with that, I went and picked up my dog. I got a puppy last July, and me and my sister went and picked her up, and it was like we went to Norton, Ohio to get her. So I don't know that's like Northeast Ohio, okay. I believe. And it was a long drive. It was like 14 hours, and we're on the road, and my sister's like, well, let's stop at Culver's. And I was like eating nothing but meat and fruit for 75 days straight. And I was feeling like a beast. You know what I mean? Like running all the time, jacked. I was like feeling awesome, mentally, physically, everything. And I was like, oh, man, I really don't want to do this shit. You know, I don't want to eat Culver's right now. But like, what else am I going to do? Go stop and pick up some apples at Quick Trip, you know? Like, so I was like, all right. So we eat Culver's, and it was insane to me. You eat that stuff after not eating it, and it's like disgusting. And I love Culver's. You know what I mean? I don't know if you know what Culver's is.
No, I don't. Is it a gas station? Or?
It's like I think it's a Midwest thing. Culver's is like they make these delicious butter burgers and like really good concrete like ice cream, but it's kind of like a fast food chain, but like a high end fast food. And you're just sitting there like, what the. But so we stopped at Culver's. It was horrible, and then it was like slowly I was like, all right, let's stop at Taco Bell, and I think that just ruined it, and it just went downhill for me. And like after that, and now we're starting to get into bow hunting, and I'm hunting all day and all that stuff. And I just started eating gas station food, all that. And I kind of just fell off the track real fast. And I'm like, God, man, it's so easy to fall back off. You know what I mean? But as far as like the actual program goes, like it helped me, like you feel like the man, like when you're real far into it, the confidence that you have just walking around doing stuff. It's just ridiculous. But, I feel like you just always, it's like you're always trying to set a bar higher, always trying, like once I was on day, I don't know what it was July 4th, and I was running 5 to 6 miles every day. And I got to a point where I'm like, oh, I'm going to run 15 miles today just for the hell of it. You're just like constantly setting the bar higher, and you just feel like, I don't know how to explain it. It's like, it's almost like the opportunities are endless. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like you could do anything you want to do. And that to me, like really showed, because I don't even run, you know what I mean? I'm not a runner. And 15 miles, I was like 15 miles, let's go. And now I'm like 15 miles, dude. No shit, you know? Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely, I mean, I would recommend doing it, you know, it's friggin' sweet, but you have to be, if you do it, you should do it. You know what I mean? Like I did it 100% right. You know, I failed it a couple times before I did it did it actually through 75 days. It's tough.
So explain a little bit to the listeners what 75 Hard is.
Yeah. So, it's a program that Andy Frisella, I listen to a lot of his podcasts. I don't listen to, you know, it's weird, and nothing against you or anything. I just don't listen to hunting podcasts. You know, I don't really listen to hunting. I don't watch hunting videos, but the podcasts I do listen to is more like, I listen to a lot of Joe Rogan, Andy Frisella. But he has a program. It's called 75 Hard. It's, you do 2 workouts, 1 indoor, 1 outdoor. They got to be for 45 minutes each. And then you have to do a diet. I did all meat and fruit, and it was an animal-based diet, they call it. So I don't know if you know what that is, but it's just all meat, fruit, butter, honey. You could do dairy. So I get raw milk from a farm 15 miles north of me. That's pretty much it. So nothing, no junk food, no drinking alcohol. You have to drink a gallon of water each day. And read 10 pages in a book. I think I covered them all. But it sounds pretty easy to me. It sounded easy. I was like, I could do that. And then you start doing it and you're like, dang, it's 75 days of this shit every day. And including that into your actual normal life. You know what I mean? Like, this is stuff you got to do in just your life, and then include all that into it. And it's like, holy shit, it builds up fast.
Yeah. And like what I think is crazy about it is like where I tend to like fall off or like struggle is like when I'm traveling or doing anything. Like that's when you really have to make it happen. Like it's a choice at that point to do it, and that's why I've had I followed a training program for the last few years. My buddy Todd Bumgardner has a program called Human Predator Pack Mule, and I go through that, but it keeps me in line because I look and it's all tracked through an app, but it's like, if I don't do these things, I feel like Todd's going to look down on me, like that's kind of like one of those things that helps motivate me, beyond me looking at myself in the mirror, but it helps me do that. But I always struggle when I'm traveling and like trying to figure out things and how to make it work. And it's really easy to fall off the wagon when you start doing those types of things and just eating really terrible. Now for me, this is definitely not lucky, but it's lucky from the standpoint of eating cleaner that I have both a gluten and dairy allergy. So like I'm kind of forced, unless I want to feel really, really shitty, like I'm forced to eat relatively clean. Now you can still eat a lot of crap food with that diet, but it helps me, stay kind of on track with some of those things. And, but Andy's podcast though, by the way, they could just, want to throw that out there. Like I love listening to that. I actually just sent it to Jason, who you talked to a little bit, Timber Ninja there, because he's big in the entrepreneurship stuff and everything. And I sent it to him, and I was like, have you heard of him? And he's like, no. I'm like, oh my gosh, like you need to dive into this, because like I've been listening to him for years, and I love his stuff, and it's really good stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but the reason, and one of the reasons why I asked you about 75 Hard is because I feel like that kind of shows a little bit of the discipline and the work that you're doing, which is what shows when it comes in your videos look like it's easy as far as you getting on deer, doing things. It's because like again, I know that's not always the case, but there's so much like beginning and prep work and daily things that are happening that lead to that point. And then that's when it makes it look easy. I mean, Andy talks about that all the time with entrepreneurship. And it's like, yeah, people think that I have these big successful businesses that days are easy. And it's like, no, they actually are really, really hard, and they suck, a lot of times. But that's the nature of trying to be good at anything.
Yep. And yeah, that's 75 days. Like, I've told myself 100 times, I'm like, dude, I'm not going to fall into, I have an eating problem. Like I can eat so much and just the worst foods. And like, if I didn't go in the woods all the time and pack and stuff, and I would be fat as shit. Like, and I don't really have a drinking problem. I don't drink that much. I barely drink, like all the other stuff is pretty easy to me, like working out, like, but the eating is so hard, and especially during bow hunting season for me. And I really want to make it a goal of mine this year during bow season to not eat like a piece of shit, because it's just like you sit all day, and like the last thing you want to do, you have to, pack your stuff out, drive home from wherever you were, unpack all your stuff, like charge batteries, all this nonsense. And by that time, it's like, dude, I need to go to bed because tomorrow morning's going to come fast, because you're doing it again. And like the last thing you want to do is like cook something healthy. You just want to eat a bunch of garbage. That's what I do anyways. So it's like, that's like a real big goal for me, and it has been for a while, but I really need to do it, and it's just something I want to do, you know?
Yeah. I've had Heather Kelly on the podcast before. She has a company called Heather's Choice, but she's kind of a nutritionist by trade, and she was just talking about, you know, just the effects of the different foods and what it does to your body in a very technical level, where I just know when I eat crappy, I feel like that, you know, and that's, and like but the mental clarity side of it, I think for me is what I've learned in bow season when I'm on the road and I start all of a sudden stopping and eating crappy stuff. And I'm just like, you know, just doing whatever just to get through the day, basically, especially getting like all day sits during the rut, your mind starts to go down fast once you're doing that. And that's like you start, you know, telling yourself things that probably aren't true to come up with excuses on this or that. And it's hard, but I think diet has such a big role in that.
Oh, for sure. I think if you ate clean, you're going to be mentally there in the tree stand on all day sit for sure. Like where I never eat clean, and I mean, it's hard to sit all day no matter what. And you're sitting there with a belly full of garbage, you know. I always bring these, vanilla Cokes I got a problem with vanilla Coke. I bring that with me in the woods. I always have vanilla Coke with me, and it's like, I wonder how much better I would feel and like mentally here in the woods. Maybe I would see more deer. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's definitely, you know, and I think more Western hunters are a lot healthier because they're in the mountains. You know what I mean? Whereas like maybe out by you, they're healthy too, but Midwest guys, you know, we're kind of this quick trip in the tree stand, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, I think that needs to change. And it needs to change for me.
Well,
anyways.
Yeah, but the way you hunt isn't traditional, I guess, as far as the Midwest type of way. Like when our mutual friend Tim and I were talking the other day, I don't remember if it was on air or off air, but we were talking about just like, I think it might have been off air, but we were talking about the separation and like when you find a place, like say for example, I was scouting this past weekend, you and I were talking a little bit about it. Like this place that I was at is very, very difficult to get into. And it's like, okay, some people might find that and go there, but are these people going to go in for 5 days in a row, for 6 days in a row, and make that hike all the way in there, go through all that nasty stuff, figure out how to traverse through the laurel and the rhododendron and get to their spot and then hunt all day and then come out and just do it day after day? I think that's what really separates people. And I think Tim was telling me, he's like, ask Curtis about his pack weight, like how much it weighs with all his camera gear and everything when it goes in. And that takes a lot of hard work.
Yeah. It's every year I'm like, what am I doing? And I try to bring the weight down, and I'm sacrificing luxury in the tree. You know, the more weight you take away, I feel like, you know, the shittier the lens, the less comfortable you are, you know, in the tree, especially if you're sitting like an all day rut sit. And it's like, yeah, I don't know how much weight I actually carry, but it's probably, I mean, it's got to be close to 50 pounds, I would imagine, you know? I mean, maybe more than that, but I mean, I got a lot of shit, like a big muddy hunter arm. That's the biggest, 28 to 300 millimeter Canon lens, which is heavy. Couple cameras with the 3 cameras. Well, one's a GoPro, so it's not much weight, but it all adds up, you know. But you were talking, before that, you were saying people doing that consistently, and there are spots that are a beast to get to around here, you know. And I always said that to myself too. I'm like, dude, you got to be on a different level to be doing this consistently over and over again. But now I think about it and I'm like, dude, if I didn't film and hunt, this wouldn't be that, I mean, it wouldn't be that hard. You know what I mean? Like all I would have to carry is a stand and sticks. Like it's, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like, and especially this day and age with everything so light, you know?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of these spots too, are getting hunted more and more and more because a lot more people are catching on to the public land trend, especially in the Midwest here. And they got this lightweight stuff, and a lot of people are getting way back. And now I find myself a lot less trying to get the farthest away from the parking lot and trying to look for areas that are more not just distance away, but a motherfucker to get to. You know, like mud swamp or just nasty steep terrain, or thorns that you have to go through for a little bit. You know what I mean? Like something that's going to deteriorate or that's going to deter them other than just distance.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. But the one thing I will say is I feel like when you've been carrying that much weight now, so like it's kind of like where you set your bar like really high, and then things that were a high bar before aren't they're nothing anymore. Like I always compare that on Western hunts, and I just talked about this on a recent podcast, but it's like the first time I went to Colorado and tried backpack hunting for 7 days, 3 days in, I could barely do it. Like I felt like I was dying. And, and last year I went 21 days and did it. It's like once you like continually work your way up, then things seem lower. But I do see people willing to get back in. Yeah, gear advancements, mapping, all these different things definitely gives people the tools to do it easier. I still think it depends on where you're at, I guess, as far as it's still a deterrent. But I do find myself even like looking for those spots that are kind of the in-betweens or just even overlooked. Sometimes it might not even be that hard. It's just like an overlooked because there's a trail that's going back and people are walking that trail like robots and not realizing this spot's over here. That's a simple example, but that's, something else that I've kind of looked at in recent years. And like my buck that I killed this year in Pennsylvania really wasn't that far in at all. It was just like not at a dead end road and going back in, or like it just was I'm not giving too much detail away with it, but yeah. It wasn't that difficult. I'll put it that way.
For sure. No, I've been finding for me, like there's not a lot of, especially Iowa public land, the access is so easy. Like everything has a nice trail. There's never like one access point, and like, it's just, there's too many access points. And I feel like that first week in November, everyone is bow hunting around here. That's my least favorite time to bow hunt, because it's like all parking lots are filled with people, and it's like there's only so many dang spots. These chunks aren't that big, you know what I mean? So I've found that like you said, and what I brought up earlier is just, it's almost like I almost have to walk everything, and I'll walk a piece and I'm like, I don't know why the bucks are here. I don't know why this is good, but it is. You know what I mean? And and looking at a map, I would never know. And so now I try to walk as much stuff as possible. And then once I find something good, then I try to and then I ask myself, why is this good? Why isn't there people in here? You know what I mean? And sometimes I think pieces go in cycles too. Like, I think that like there was a spot that we used to hunt that was really good, and then it just started being kind of not very good, and then I started seeing ladder stands and human intrusion coming off the private, and I was getting cameras stolen, and then we went back to that like a year or two later. I think it was like 2 years later, just to check in, and there was deer everywhere again, and the people were gone. You know what I mean? So it's like they maybe overhunted it, they thought it sucked, and then they leave, and it turns better again. You know what I mean? So it kind of go in cycles, and it's like these areas around here. I don't know exactly about. I haven't really looked at land over by you, but I mean, these chunks of public around here are not big by any means, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Like there's some bigger chunks, but for the most part, I mean, they're pretty small. And for me personally, it's like I can't look at something and just rule it out. I have to walk it, and I have to, you know what I mean? Because you just never know, you know?
Yeah, no, that is completely different than where I'm at, where there's large chunks of public and continuous. And like for me, I always just like I can be in one chunk and just continue to keep moving like within that area and kind of figure out depending on how hunting pressure is. But those smaller chunks now, I definitely don't have as much experience to be able to say much on it, but it's making sense kind of what you're saying now. Like a lot of what you're doing right now in the springtime is, it sounds like you're walking around and you're checking out deer sign, but you're also looking what the hunter sign looks like too. And do people like leave stands and stuff up, or are you able just to see where people are climbing? And
yeah, no, I mean, a lot of people leave stands up, but you know, you can tell. I mean, I go in and, you know, it depends on what you're seeing, but you know, if sometimes you can tell that if it's a guy coming off the private, or you know, he's got like trails ribboned out or something like that, or you know, if you just see some stupid big dumb double man ladder stand, you're like, okay, that's a gun hunter most likely, so I don't really have to care about that much if I'm hunting this piece early season, you know what I mean? So I'm just it's almost like I'm trying to gain as much intel as possible on those walks, as far as deer sign, as far as human pressure and terrain, like just knowing how everything is laid out, you know, so I can plan access and exit. And I'm not really looking for, like, I'm not really like planning out. I'm not really planning anything out unless I have like specific bucks targeted that I know of. Like if it's a new chunk, I'm just kind of just getting a real good feel of the area, marking a lot of stuff, bunch of notes on my phone, and then in the summertime I'll glass and run cameras if it's legal. Minnesota, some stuff is not legal for Minnesota, but Iowa and Wisconsin it is. And I'll run cameras, glass and stuff, and then once you find the deer, then you're like, okay, now you start putting stuff together, and you remember he's probably coming off that. He's probably coming out of this area, you know what I mean? But a lot of times, and this is why I want to walk every freaking single piece of public in this entire area, because I'll be driving, and I'm kind of new to the area, so give it some time, but I'll be driving and you find a deer and you're like, I was going to walk it and I never did. And now it's like, you don't want to go in there that much, you know, because I know he's there. So you're kind of trying to play staying on the perimeter a little bit, you know, you don't want to mess anything too much up. So now hopefully I can just walk as much as possible. Once you find those deer in the summer for early season, then it's like, okay, I know what's going on now, you know?
yeah. Do you, how do you categorize all that stuff in your head? Do you write down notes from your scouting sessions? Or like, how do you remember when you're walking that many pieces? So like, then you go in and you find a buck and remember like, okay, this is where I found, you know, I know obviously you can mark pins in a map, but like, do you have anything else that helps you remember that?
No, I usually just when I mark the pin, there's like a little comment section or whatever. I don't know, write some stuff in it. If it's something worth talking about, you know, but if it's just whatever, I just like to mark everything, and then I pull it up on a big view, and I just like to look at it and just, you know, click on the points, be like, okay, and it starts coming back to my head, you know what I mean? But yeah, there is a lot of stuff marked, and it's like once you get to October, you're like, what was that again? You know, I probably should write down more notes. I don't know, is that something you do? Do you do a lot of note?
Yeah, I have to. I just like, I feel like I can remember things sometimes, and there's other things I'll forget, like little intricacies, like if I'm in the woods and I'm just like, oh, I gotta remember that, and then like I'll forget. Or like, I'm really big on like, if I find good setups, like potential setup spots, taking a picture of the tree and putting it in with the notes, and like writing notes on like how many sticks I think I'm going to need or what way to face and like that kind of stuff, because I've gotten in situations where I'm like, I get in there and I can't remember what tree it is. They all look different in the dark, and I'm like going around, and it's just like, then I climb up and it gets daylight and I can't see anything. Like there's no shooting lanes, and I'm just like, so I really try to take a lot of notes and refer back to them. And I put together what I call like a hunt plan where, say I have like 5 big areas that I'm looking at. I'll have those kind of in order, like the 5 top areas I want to focus on that year. And then I'll have specific spots listed underneath it. And then I'll have notes about those specific areas, like, okay, something about access and wind directions and things like that. So that when it comes the time of the season and it's like, okay, this is what the weather conditions are going and I'm struggling at all these spots. Now I can just go to this list and kind of look and like, okay, I forgot about this spot. I can go here and try this. And it's just like, it helps keep my mind in it when you start getting down about things not going as planned, that I always have like a list of things to refer to and go at it. Now it's taken a while to get to that point. It's usually from just me screwing up and not feeling good about it, and that's where I've found that it helps me. That's my way of like being able to stay on track.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely makes sense. Probably something I should do. I did a lot of that stuff, like actually a long time ago. I took pictures of trees and I like planned specific routes. Like I'll mark specific points for like entry routes, and like it just seems like every single, maybe it would be different now, but when I did all that stuff back then, I mean, I probably know a lot more now, but it just like every time I planned all this stuff out. I had a big elaborate plan, and it just was like completely different. Every single time I'm like, what was I doing? Like, why do I have these points here? And like, so it's like almost to me, like I just try to stay very generic. I don't try to get real specific, unless there's like, oh dude, that tree right there. You know what I mean? But
yeah,
I don't really like to get super specific with everything because I just feel like everything's changing all the time, or I don't know, it looks different in the fall, and it's just like and then it just turns into a big waste of time for me. You know what I mean? So it's like I kind of just try to stay generic. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's a good answer, and I too, like when I'm looking at stuff, it's like I have areas and we're hunting different type stuff, so it doesn't always correlate, but like for me with the big woods and there not being any ag or any sort of like food like that, I'll have places that don't have any mass, like there's no oak trees, anything, but what that does is it keeps things consistent during the rut because they're browsers, and it's like unless a clear cut grows up or does something and browse changes and they move or they come in, they log, that'll change things. But a lot of times those areas are super consistent at that time of year, but they're really difficult early season and late season. So then I'll have different areas that are more like oak specific that I'll have that I can check for acorns. That would be maybe more of an early season spot, or apple trees and things that like, so I have like different areas depending on times of year a lot of times. And, but then there's like this past year, this was a big lesson learned for me, was I was hunting one deer and I tried hunting him early and I never had any intel. I could not figure out where that deer lived early, and I couldn't figure out the food as far as what he's doing, and it just felt like a big waste of time. Like I should have just waited until I know that he comes back into this area from historical patterns. That's like, I don't know. It's a big learning thing, but that was something this past year that I really learned from.
One thing, I don't know about you, but I mean, you're in some pretty rugged terrain where you're at, bluff country, and so you would classify those, it's you're actual hunting mountains.
Yeah, I mean, it can be considered anything from hill country to mountains depending on where I'm at. I'm not really sure where that line is and what it changes, but yeah, it can be anywhere from things that are 600 to 700 foot elevation to something that's 14 to 1600 feet elevation from top to bottom. So it varies.
So as an early season, like I really struggle with this, and I don't know if what you think about it, but like finding specific buck beds in the hills for me is like in the swamp. I've found a lot of them. You know what I mean? Big giant beds, rub cluster, just water surrounding it. But this is like, I can never pin, like I know there's a good buck in this area, but it's like, I can never find this exact spot where he's bedding. I don't know if he's bedding in different spots, but it's like, I just can't seem to pinpoint where they're at, and it just drives me nuts. And I don't know if they don't have a specific bed, or you know what I mean. And what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I've tried to hunt like specific beds, and I'm the same way as you. Is like I look at it as like bedding areas for the most part, and I think the steeper it gets, the better as far as like really finding like focal points where they'll like to bed. Like if there's like it's really steep and you get a little flat spot, they might bed there more times than not. But for the most part, I'll get these areas like I'll call it like I'll find a big clear cut and it'll be like a section of it. I figure a buck, like I'll walk the perimeter and I see big rubs and stuff, and I start to find some clusters, and I might find a good bed that he's using sometimes. And then at that point, I just kind of like surround it with cameras and start to learn a little bit how he's using different areas. And then I just put a lot of time in the same tree, because it's like at some point he's going to come through here. I just don't know when. And that's where, and I'm not claiming to be like an early season just very good at it. Like in the last 10 years, I've only killed 2 bucks in the early season during that time. Now I don't hunt a whole lot then, but I struggle with it unless you find like only one ridge that has white oaks that are dropping or something, then it's a little bit more predictable. But for the most part, I feel like they have bedding areas more so than a specific bed.
Okay.
Is that kind of what you're seeing? Yeah.
I mean, I haven't been real successful either. I haven't, as far as early season hills go, this is the first year really that I hunted like early season, September in the hills. Usually I was driving there for the rut, but it was, I learned a lot of stuff, but as far as like, I'm just trying to like, when I'm out scouting, like right now, I'm like, I know there's a buck bedding right here somewhere, but it's just like, there's no like distinct, like, okay, this is where he's laying every time. So, and then I don't know, I hear guys talk about it, and they're like, I know he's bedded there. I'm like, really? You really know he's bedded there? Like, I don't know.
No. No, I don't know. And maybe people, I'm sure some people can. I just haven't been able to like pinpoint it. So I just take kind of like educated guesses on, where I try to get into a spot a little bit further off the bed and kind of waiting on those cold fronts to be able to hunt, where it's like, okay, he's probably going to come through here if he's bedding over here, if he's bedding over here. When I killed a buck opening day in 2021, that was the case. Like I thought he was bedding somewhere, and the only reason now that I know that, or at least I think that he wasn't bedding in that spot, was after I shot him, I hit him back and ended up jumping him with a dog, and he was bedded in this spot. And I was like, okay, I bet he went there because he knew it was secure, like he had the advantages there. And I'm like, all right. And then there was a pretty good bed there, afterwards, and then he ended up dying. But it was like, okay, that he wasn't doing exactly what I thought he was, but I was still in a good spot for him to do that. Was there some luck involved in that? Definitely. But at the same time, it's like, I don't typically like hunt right over a bed just because I can't figure out how to do that successfully for the most part. I try to get off a little bit, which a lot of times that they're not going to be there because they're already back to bed at that point or whatever in the early season. But that's kind of where I'm at least at this point. I haven't been able to figure out, there's not any really worn down to the dirt bed spots that looks like that thing he just lays there all the time.
Well, that's good to hear though, because I'm like, I'm always looking for that, you know what I mean? And I'm just like, I can never find it. I'm like, what is going on? There's a buck that I'm after in Minnesota. He's nothing special, but he's real thick, heavy, nice. He's an 8-pointer this year. He was a 10, but I have the point he's betting on, like, and I just I've been in there and I'm trying to figure it out, and it's just like I know he's here, but it's like he's just got to be laying in random spots on this end of this point somewhere, you know.
I was just gonna say, when you're talking about a point, I had a comment on that. Like, a lot of times I'll figure out a point that I'm, thinking that a buck's bedding on, whether it's camera intel or just seeing the rubs and stuff, but I don't know exactly where he's at there. And I used to worry a lot about like finding that bed in that specific spot. And if I do find it, that's great. But for the most part, it's like, I usually like say there's like oaks back off on the ridge a little bit further, and I'm thinking, okay, maybe he's come from that bed to feed there. Then my next step is like, I'm looking for a big scrape that I can find somewhere in between there that I'm like, maybe he's going to check this before he goes out, or some thicker brush or something that's going to like make him feel secure to be there or on the edge of it in daylight still. And then it all depends though. Like, I can't even give like, oh, I try to get within 100 yards of where I think he's bedding, or 200 yards. It all depends on what it looks like and how open the woods are and all that kind of different stuff. And again, it's all just educated guesses at that point. And I'd say more times than not, it doesn't work out. But that's kind of how I look at it, at least. And I do feel that I have better luck hunting these deer like in the early season with bedding in the mornings, and like, especially if you get to an area, I'm thinking of mostly areas that don't have like a ton of hunting pressure that you can get in, but I find that they'll like feed around their bedding area for a little while before, or then at that point I can get closer to that point or out there where I can kind of see, depending on how wide the point is, and be in some areas to be able to get a visual on them. But that's just kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, I've had better luck in the mornings too. I think mainly just because it is so, I mean, depending on how thick it is, like you said, every spot's different, but I mean, it's so hard to get there. They're always situated in a spot where, unless you know exactly where they're at, how do you know how to access close enough? You know what I mean? So it's like, I feel like they got the advantage. So in the morning, I'm like, okay, I can even make a little bit of noise. You know what I mean? And I can get in there early, set up, and try to get them. You know what I mean? But that afternoon, early season, especially once the foliage starts coming off a little bit, the leaves, then it's real difficult. But that's what I'm finding anyways. Like, dang, this is tough.
Yeah.
You know?
And also too, like when they're already bedded down, normally I find, like, especially in like the points, the does will be bedded on the flat. So like, even though you might not bump that buck, you're going to bump the does, and that's like the alarm system for that buck. And then like, you don't even know he's gone, but he's gone.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I was hunting this river bottom in Iowa the first 14 or 15 days of this season, until I ended up shooting one. But it was just ridiculous. The amount of deer in there, and it's just like constantly getting blown at. Like, they're bedding everywhere. You know what I mean? Like, I have a specific, I think I know where the buck's at, and I want to get close enough to him. You know what I mean? But how are you going to get close enough to him without bumping freaking 10 does? There's those does. The deer density in Iowa is pretty nuts. Like, I don't know if you're familiar. I mean, I don't know if you heard and seen, but I don't know if you've ever hunted Iowa, but it's just like, even the public lands, it's the amount of deer is nuts. Like, does, just piles of does. And especially in some of these spots where I'm hunting, and it actually makes it really difficult, because it's like, there's just more eyeballs, more noses, and once they start blowing, you're like, oh, now that buck definitely ain't getting up, or he's definitely not coming this way, or, you know.
It's like kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't when it comes to deer density, because I'm typically hunting areas that have really low deer density, but then you don't see many deer, and then you're wondering if you're even in the game at all. Yeah. But then but when you're in high deer density areas, you're blowing them out. And I've never hunted Iowa. Now, I do have enough points that I could draw probably even this year, but I'm not going to. I'm going to wait until the following year, and I think I'm going to cash in and do it. But it's just like, Yeah, I'm learning that it's like really difficult. And like West Virginia, where I'm at, and that's some real mountain country. But there's a good deer population there, and I'm struggling with the blowing deer out thing because they're just like, it seems like they're all over the place. And does just do whatever the hell they want, like as far as bedding, because they're in groups. They're just
right.
like, oh, we can plop down here, and it's fine.
Yep. Yeah. It's kind of similar situation that I'm in. Like Iowa's, the deer density is real strong, and then you go up to Minnesota, and it's like a totally different world. It's like there are hardly any deer here, you know.
Yeah.
And there's another thing too, is like I've been another reason why I like to walk just everything instead of just looking at stuff and off a map or judging even by like rubs and scrapes. There's this chunk of public in Minnesota. There's 3 big bucks in that vicinity, in that area, and there's probably 1 rub in that entire area, like little tiny rub, and it's like, and just scouting it is just mind blowing to me, because it's like, there's no bucks. Like if I was scouting this and I wasn't hunting it and I didn't know glassing, I didn't see these deer, I would never know, besides tracks. You know what I mean? The only thing that would tell me that there's big bucks there is the tracks. There's nothing in that whole area that makes me think, yep, there's big bucks here, besides the tracks and seeing them myself. You know what I mean? It's crazy to me.
And I think that's where like your woodsmanship comes in so much, of like things past that, because one thing I've learned from hunting a lot of areas is every area is different as far as what good sign looks like. And it's taken me a while to learn that. Like when I first went to Southern Ohio, it was like, holy cow, these scrapes are all the size of car hoods, it seemed like. And I was like, the first one I found them, like I found the honey hole already, and then like you hunt it and it's like nothing. And like if I found that scrape in Pennsylvania, it's like, you need to sit here because something's going to happen. And I've learned that. And there's also areas in PA where I know some of the biggest bucks I've ever filmed live, and they don't rub like at all, like you're saying. Like there'll be scrapes, but there's not these rubs, and that's where I think it also helps. Like I'm not a huge shed hunter. Like I usually focus on scouting, but it helps when you find a big shed to know that there's big deer living there, and that's what it really took me to learn about. Actually, that spot was cameras was what told me that there was big deer there. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, I can't believe that there was that kind of deer there for the sign that I was seeing. But then there's other areas I'll go to. There was some areas in Pennsylvania that were really remote. There was, for a while there, I was just trying to find like the most remote place ever. I figured there was going to be just Goliaths everywhere. And I'd find these like rubs that were literally the size of my thigh, and I never got anything over like 110 inches on camera. They were just these old, like gnarly looking bucks that were doing it. But they didn't have the food and everything else to grow big antlers. But it was just funny that the sign it can be so different in different places. And it takes, like you said, just walking a lot and paying attention to things like tracks and sheds and whatever else you can find to put those pieces of the puzzle together.
Yeah, I just never, I guess that's just me learning, you know what I mean, throughout doing it. You know, I've always just like looked for big rubs and big scrapes, and this year was just totally, like, I think totally different now. You know what I mean? After I found the spot in the summertime, and I didn't even see any of the bucks glassing. I just drove there, and it felt like there's got to be big bucks here. It was just real thick, like tons of thorns, and just like it felt like the vegetation was real nasty and thick, and lots of food surrounding. So I'm like, I'll throw a couple cameras up and see what's going on. And I had one camera on an oak tree, and I was getting a bunch of pictures of does and some like 2-year-old bucks and stuff. And then I went down and checked a camera in this ditch crossing that I was just I don't even know how to explain it. You know what I mean? Besides maybe seeing some bigger tracks, it just felt like there's got to be something nice in here. You know what I mean? I don't know. You just get this feeling sometimes, even scouting. It's just like there's big deer in here. So I pulled that camera, and the first picture I pulled up, I was talking to my buddy Chris at the time. I was like, I'm checking the camera right now, and I'm going through it, and sure enough, the first picture was the buck that I've been chasing this whole year, and I was just like, I was freaking out because I was like, I picked the spot, you know what I mean? Like, I never saw any deer here. Like, there wasn't any buck sign. It was just the feeling I got when I got there, and driving around in the summer helped me a lot with that. Just the feel of the area and kind of how desolate feeling it is. Like, you got to go down a lot of like real crusty roads, and like there's not much around, and it might be, anyone, with a car is not going to drive down this road possibly. And it's just kind of just a different feeling when I got there, and I was like, all right, I think this is going to be a good spot. And sure enough, it was. But yeah, it's just weird to me. I don't know.
Yeah, no, and it's funny when you're saying that. It was just reminded me of a conversation with my cousin Mason, who I just had on the podcast. Like he doesn't do anything with social media or do anything. He's just very kind of quiet, and he just kills big deer. But like when you ask him about things, a lot of times it's just like, it just felt like a big buck spot, and then he starts asking himself why afterwards. But it's just like I remember even before he killed his big deer this year that he was hunting for a couple of years, he was like, he called me, he's like, I found the spot. And I'm like, asking why. He's like, it's the spot, it's just like everything clicked all of a sudden. Like it just feels, and that just, this comes from like, with you and anyone that's been doing it for a long time. It's just the years of doing that you start like, even if sometimes it's subconscious recognizing those things that just like feel like, man, if I was a big deer, this is where I'd be hanging out.
Yeah, for sure. And then you get, like, you feel it, and then you get the intel. Like, you finally find something, like a huge track or a big scrape or just a massive rub or a big bed or whatever. And then you're like, I knew it, I knew it. At least for me, I'm just like, but I get that feeling a lot. And I mean, a lot of times I'm wrong too, but still, and I think a lot of times that I start thinking back, I'm like, okay, now that this spot that I found, it didn't have any big buck sign in it. And even now scouting it, I wouldn't even think spot's not that great. But I start thinking to myself, I'm like, and then I start thinking, well, okay, it's got a nice river running through here. It's got all of the puzzle pieces for something to be living there. You know what I mean? Even though it doesn't have the sign, it's got everything. It's real thick. It's got a river running through. It's got all the food in the world. You know what I mean? And even if there's a bunch, and it's crazy too, because this piece is just hammered with pressure. Like squirrel hunters, I actually had to call the warden opening day. I go in, I jump the buck I was after. And I go in there, jump the buck I was after. He was bedded like 200 yards from the parking lot. But I was going down to hunt, and I hunted anyways. I had to call the warden because a squirrel hunter shot a deer in front of me. And yeah, it's crazy. And so I was like, I'm getting the hell out of here. Get down, call the warden. And they went down there with tracking dogs, tracked the deer for like 100 yards, couldn't find it, whatever. But it was crazy though, because when I went in there, I jumped that deer, and I figured out now, and this is in the back of my mind now for this next year early season, if the pressure of the squirrel hunters, I know where he's going to be at, because he just, with the wind he had, he was bedded on that point. This is what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
He's bedded on the point, and where I know he's bedding, where I think I know he's bedding, and the squirrel hunters were down by the river and stuff, and he ran with wind to face up the draw and bedded 200 yards away from the parking lot in this thick shit, you know what I mean? And the only reason why I jumped him is because I this is my first time hunting hills, so I was like, well, I don't know exactly where these deer are bedding, and like they can see a lot. So I'm like, I'm gonna get down into this draw here and walk down in this draw, and that's the only reason why I jumped them instead of just walking that main trail in. And now I'm like, okay, I got hopefully, you know what I mean. So I have all this stuff stored in the memory, and we'll see how this year pans out. Hopefully he's still alive.
Yeah. Oh man, that's funny. And it's like, but going back to what you were saying before is like when you find it and you like reverse engineer it, like as far as like, the why behind, what you're seeing or what you're finding. But no, like that situation you just talked about, but that's where like, I feel like learning an area and spending time over a few years, you start picking up those things and understanding how the pressure comes in with like, when we were texting earlier today, you were like, do you have squirrel hunters that are like bad? And I learned pretty quickly that they're just a pain in your ass as far as like from a deer hunting perspective, that it really messes things up.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, they're on another level over here. I don't know what the deal is. Like, they aren't bad back in northeast Wisconsin. Like, you'll have they'll be squirrel hunting occasionally, but here it's like, geez, man. Like, even like during the rut and way back somewhere, they're just everywhere. Freaking boom, 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 getting closer, and you're texting your buddy. I'm texting Skylar. He's hunting a spot, and we're kind of in the same chunk, and it's just like, yeah, I got him right below me. And I'm like, dude, it's just crazy to me. Like, how many freaking squirrels do you need to shoot? Plus, it's like, I mean, I don't have any problems with other hunters and stuff, but it's like, sometimes it's like, you see another truck in the parking lot, and if you're a squirrel hunter, I'm just coming from a squirrel hunt. If I was a squirrel hunter, you see a truck in parking lot, and it's November 6th. What do you think they're doing? Like, do you have to go back in there and shoot? Like, there's 100 million public chunks around that you could shoot squirrels that I'm sure not everyone's going to be in. It's like, yeah. I don't know, dude. It's just, it gets kind of frustrating sometimes, for sure.
I don't understand the hunter etiquette sometimes when it comes down to like, I'll be in areas that are big chunks of land, and if I pull into a place I want to park and there's another truck there, I go somewhere else. And it's like, even though that there's a very slim chance that person is anywhere near where I'm going, it's just like, I don't want to screw it up for them. And it's like, it doesn't matter if you're a squirrel hunter or deer hunter or whatever. It's just like, hunter etiquette is like, and I do understand that there's places that are smaller chunks and like you can't get away from people a lot of times, but still it's like, if there's other options, don't screw it up for other people. Like, I don't know, that's just the way I am. I've been beaten to spots many times, and it's just like just a kick in my ass is like, okay, I wasn't here early enough, or this guy beat me fair and square, and it's just the way it is.
I feel the same way most of the time. I guess it depends on the chunk. For me, like, if I feel like that guy is not hunting my spot, it's just a feeling you get, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then, and if I'm after like a specific deer and it's like a weird setup or something, like no one's going to be hunting there, or I'm not going to be messing the guy up. But if, I feel the same way. Like, when I see people, I'm just like, all right, I'm not going to mess that up. And even shed hunting, like, you're not even hunting. You could talk and make as much noise as possible. Shed hunting, there's a truck in there. I'm like, dang it. I wanted to go there. Now I got to go somewhere else. I don't know. And that's another thing too. I just don't really like seeing people in the woods, to be honest. You know what I mean?
No, I'm the same way. And it's like shed hunting. I think that messes with your mind even more, because you always feel like everybody's found all the sheds, like, or if I find a boot track in an area, like, dude. I'm like, well, I'm done, like, that's it. And and like, even thinking of like yourself that spends as much time as you do, you're missing sheds, like, for sure. But it just gets in your head, and it's hard to get it out.
Just today, I was walking, and I'm like, dang it, boot track. So then I would be like, all right, I'm gonna go into this thorn this thorn thicket up in this draw here, and it's nasty in there. Like, dog doesn't want to walk through it. I'm carrying her, and I'm like, there's got to be a shed in here. And boot track. I'm like, God, dang it, man. The guy was doing the same thing I was doing. But, dude, I think, and it deflates the sails pretty fast. You know what I mean? Like, you see boot tracks, and you're like, man, this sucks. But, like you said, dude, I mean, how many are you missing? Unless you're, like, the world's best shed hunter, like, if they're laying the open, maybe. But a lot of times they're not. So, how many are you missing? And, it's kind of funny. I was thinking about it the other day. I was thinking, man, shed hunting is kind of a lot like the rut. Like, shed hunting, it's like you can go, like, for me, rut hunting is like you see a bunch of deer or you don't see shit. And it's like they go in spurts and nothing really makes sense. And shed antler hunting is like you can walk 50 miles and not find an antler. And then all of a sudden you walk 2 miles and you're finding them all over the place. And then like, I don't know. It's just like a lot of similarities as rut hunting. It's like kind of luck. You know what I mean? Like kind of depending on luck, like the antler could be laying in the ditch. You know what I mean? And during the rut, you could be shooting a buck in a stupid spot. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I was just thinking, it was just kind of funny to me. I was thinking about it the other day.
I've never thought of it that way, but you're exactly right. Like that's exactly how it is too. Like I'll have days that I'll go out and find 4, 5, 6, 7 sheds and be like, oh my gosh, like this is the best thing ever. And then I'll go 2 weeks and not finding a single antler. And it feels like there's no chance of me ever finding them, and everybody's been through places, whether that's the reality or not,
or if they're on their heads yet.
Yeah, exactly. But it's the same thing, like, with the rut, because it's like you can be in a place and hunt, 3 days and not see a single deer, at least in my case, and it's like nothing, and then all of a sudden it's just chaos and things break loose, and I've never heard it compared to shed hunting, but that's actually really funny.
Yeah, I don't know. I was just thinking about that. It's just weird to me. It's just, there's just so much luck, and like there's so much luck involved in it that it's just like, if you're solely shed hunting, which I do sometimes in certain areas, but a lot of times I'm scouting too. But I was just thinking from a shed hunting point of view, it's just, I don't know, weird to me.
Yeah. I find myself, like, usually when I'm specifically shed hunting, it'll be like, I'll be scouting and then I find like either an area with some beds or a place that's like tore up from winter feeding. Then I like turn it into like a shed hunting mission for like 20 minutes, and I'm like going back and forth, and then I'm like, back on my trail again. And or if I'm looking for a specific deer and I really want to find his antlers, then I'm like I'll go into a specific spot 5-6 times and just like cover it. And you look at my Spartan Forge and the whole map's just like back and forth and like covering it. But for the most part, it's just like, I don't have the time to like, or I haven't made the time to be able to do that in every area that I go into, know.
For sure. Yeah. I'm the same way. I mean, I probably do a little more shed hunting, like specific shed hunting, than you. It sounds like you do a lot more scouting. I mean, I'm kind of doing the same. I'm doing them both, but it is really hard to be really good at scouting, or like do a really good scouting job and cover the ground for sheds. So you kind of have to, I kind of play the line a little bit, you know what I mean? And then, like you said, if like that specific buck that I was targeting in Minnesota, I was freaking like standing there with the binos. I'd get up on rock croppings. I'm standing there for 10 minutes, just, and you're moving real slow, zigzagging back and forth. And like you said, you look at the map, it's like, it's all over the place.
Yeah, and it's literally finding a needle in a haystack too. It's like, if you really think about it, your odds are so low.
Oh, I know. It's like you're putting all that time in, where in reality the thing could be laying out in the middle of this field over here on private that I wouldn't, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. But you just never know,
Yeah, that's exactly right. That is funny. What do you are you going to stick to those 3 states? Is that kind of your plan for the year?
Yeah.
To focus on.
Yeah. So Minnesota, I'll be hunting early. They open up like middle of September, and then October 1st, Iowa opens up. So depending on my plan is to target that. I call him the Mongo buck. I don't even know why, but that's my plan for early. And then I was chasing a deer I call the Willow King, and when I shot my buck this year, I thought it was him, and totally different deer. But it happened so fast, and I just saw and it was a side angle. It wasn't like front on, and I made that choice. I'm like, I got to shoot him, and I saw the side, and I'm like, it's a huge buck. I just don't. So it could be him. You know what I mean? And I ended up shooting him, and when I looked back, I thought I killed the Willow King, and I was freaking out in the tree, dude. I was like, holy man, because this thing's like 25 inches wide. I was like pumped, and then I look at my viewfinder, and it was just like, I'm pumped. I'm still excited, right? I shot a buck, but I was like, oh man, that's not, because he turned his head, he's looking at me, and I stopped him, and I was like, that's not him. But oh well, I mean, it is what it is. But I'll be hunting that buck hopefully early Iowa. I'm trying to get on some deer early season. I've never been really good with that's always my goal, is to find a specific buck and kill that specific buck early. And I really have never done that with a mature buck, like a big solid buck. And that's my goal, and that's always been my goal. And then I'll hunt Wisconsin probably during the rut, and it all depends. But yeah, I'll be hunting all 3 states.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, and that's cool that you've located yourself in an area where you can hit, these different places, and I know for me, like last year, I was just all over the place, and I hated that, and it sounds like oh, get to hunt all over. That's poor you, and I don't mean to sound that way, but it's just like, for me to be successful at anything, like I need to put a lot of time into it. So it's like, for me, I've put on, it's like Pennsylvania and West Virginia. I'm focusing on those, and then possibly late season Ohio. Because it's like that season just goes a lot longer, and it's like, okay, then that would be like my third whitetail state that I would potentially go to. But I'm putting all my chips in those 2 states, and just, I know it's going to take a while to do it, and I haven't been able to, for the most part, like just go in and get it done in a couple days. So
I'm the same way. That sounds exactly like what I'm doing here with Minnesota and Iowa. Wisconsin's kind of like if I fill a tag, you know what I mean? But
yeah.
I got a question for you. Do you try to focus on like specific areas and hunt a lot of those same specific areas, or are you bouncing around to your best spots all over? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'll say that I kind of do a little bit of both, but I do find that I do best when I focus on a couple of areas and like really put the time into those. But sometimes my mind takes me to just like going to a whole bunch of different places and like bouncing around a lot. And for me, I find if I focus on 1 or 2 areas specifically, that I do better than if I'm really being scattered across the board. So what I'll do though is, like, on days like that I want to hunt, maybe I'll hunt those areas I want to, and then I'll be out scouting on other days, different areas, to always have kind of backup plans if something happens. I can't tell you how many times I've been in, and for some reason, first week in November, they decide to log an area or do something that completely changes things. So I always like to have the backups, but I feel like I do better of having those specific spots. What about with you?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I felt this year. I mean, I was kind of focusing on the specific deer and learning those specific areas, but then sometimes throughout the season, you're like, you put so much pressure on it, and it's like, is he gone? Like, you haven't seen him in a while. Is he gone? Like, do I focus my time somewhere else? And there was a time frame where, is he gone? And then I went back and he's there. Or like, if it got super hot and it was like, I don't want to go in there and mess that spot up, but I have a real good spot with a water hole up top, I'm going to go hunt that. You know what I mean? But then at the same time, I'm so invested with that other spot and that other deer that I go to this water hole spot. I'm just talking about last year. I go to this water hole spot and it's just like, I hope I kill a buck, but at the same time, I'm like, I really want to kill that other buck. You know, like, I don't really want to kill a buck here, but I will if one comes out. You know what I mean? It's weird.
Yeah. No, I did that. I did that exact same thing last year. Whereas I was struggling with finding sign of this deer I was hunting, and I couldn't get a photo of him. I couldn't even find sign that made me think he was there. And I hadn't had a picture since the end of August. And I was like, you know, what do I do? And I kept hunting it. And then I was just like, and then all of a sudden, like, middle to later part of October, I started going everywhere else. I'm bouncing around. I'm hunting different spots. And then I'm like, no, what are you doing? You know, go back. And I go back. But then, like, the conditions it was so hot and it wasn't like a spot to hunt for that. So I ended up, luckily, it was my last day that I had to hunt, last half day. Middle of the day, I'm sitting in a tree. I literally called my dad and I was just talking to him on the phone. And I was like, I think I'm going to make a move. I've been sitting in that tree for like 3 days and hadn't seen a deer. And I just drove like 15 miles to another spot and then ended up killing the buck that evening. So it worked out. But it also, in the back of my mind, I was kind of, I'm not upset because I was very happy with the deer I killed, but I was really like, I've been hunting this other deer for 3 years and I'd screwed up an opportunity on him before. And I was just like, really wanted him. And then to have the biggest kick in the nuts ever. Well, he got killed in rifle, and I went and checked my cameras, and the time period when he normally shows up, November like 14th, you know, on, he's just walking in front of the cameras, daylight, chasing does, grunting, doing, well, what killed him was the day before rifle season opened, I got a video of him with tongue out, chasing a doe, grunting, doing this stuff in front of the camera. And then the next day, or maybe it was 2 days later, I don't remember, but he got killed. And I'm like, well, that doe killed him, you know, like he was horny and that just got him, right, killed. That's the reason at 7 years old that deer walked out in front of somebody during gun season.
How did you know that he died? Did you know the person that shot him?
No, but I got I got a picture sent to me on a phone, and it was like, look at this deer. Somebody killed it. I don't know who killed it. And I was like, that's my, my buck. It was so bad. And I was like, and then I ended up finding more to the story and someone who talked to that person and found out the story behind it. And it was just like basically climbed up into a tree in rifle season and he walked into the wide open and it was just like a chip shot. I'm like, he's never done that for me.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I've been working like, so hard.
You know, that's like my worst, not my worst fear, but one of my things I think about is like, if the buck that I'm after gets killed by someone and I just don't know about it. I don't know. I don't know. I want to know exactly how he died. You know, I want to know where he was, what he was doing. You know what I mean? Like, I have so much time invested into this deer. It's like, that would be a kick in the nuts to not know anything.
Yeah.
You know? And just have him vanish and you're like, what happened to him? Is he still alive? You never know. You know?
Yeah, there's a deer that I was chasing that I called Hercules that I had hit in the brisket in 2015. He was a giant, and I chased him for another couple years, and he picked up a sheds. I was hunting this deer, and then all of a sudden one year he just wasn't on camera anymore, and I have no idea what happened to him. Nothing. I never picked him up again. I've been in the area, no sign of him, and it just like makes me wonder. I was like, but I hunted like that whole next year for him thinking that he might just magically show back up, and he never obviously did, but it was just like I want to know, like, is his skull just rotting somewhere, or like did he die of old age? Did somebody shoot him? It's like I feel like I'd hear about this deer getting shot somehow through Facebook or somewhere being posted, but yeah. And I think for you, like, too, like going to a new place where you probably don't know many people locally or anything in the areas you're at, like you really don't know.
Yeah, but one thing that's cool around here, I lucked out big time, is one of my neighbors, he like knows everybody. And for luck has it, I bought a house next to him, and he's a big shed hunter, and we get along really well. And like, usually doesn't happen like that, because I don't like just go talk to people. Like, I'm not like a people person. I'm not gonna like talk to all my neighbors, but he's a people person, so he came up to me, and then I found out, so he knows everybody in this entire area. So like, he's always filling me in on things, and like, this guy shot a big buck here and this, and I'm like looking on my mapping system and stuff. So I don't know, I kind of lucked out there, because I get a lot of good intel, just little things here and there that I can put into my bag, and keep in the back of my mind for things,
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. That's a good neighbor to have.
Oh, dude, for sure.
I always laugh at, like, I like going to, like, whenever I go down and get some like wings or something at the bar, and then people come up because they know that I'm big into hunting, and they just start just potty mouth, just like there's or not potty, whatever. They're just dumping information out of their mouth, and I'm just like, holy cow, just learning so much.
But here's the thing is, like, I know exactly what you're talking about with that. So, yeah, but like, so here's the thing is, like, what do you know is true and what do you know is not true? It's kind of, oh, this big buck. And it's like, what's first of all, what's big? Yeah. Second of all, I don't even know if this guy's just full of shit or what, So that's tough.
Yeah, that's 100%
funny, though.
Right.
It's funny.
I've even had people reach out to me and be like, "You should chase this deer." I heard about this here, and I'm like, I don't want to go down like chasing something that's not even real, or it's not even in this county or whatever. And it's just like, I don't know, but it is kind of funny when you do learn those things. I just had that situation today, actually, with seeing a picture of sheds that were sent. And it's like, they found these sheds here, and I'm like, I know, and it's an area that I spent a lot of time in. I'm like, I really feel like I would know if this deer was there, but I think that's a kind of a tale of, this person told that person, and then the story gets mixed up, and it's
for sure. Yeah. I don't know. You just never know exactly what, it's funny too. Like, when someone tells me something, even if it's like true and it's sweet, like, I don't want people to tell me anything when it comes to that stuff, because it's like, I want to find my own stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I was talking to Jason on the phone, the Timber Ninja guy.
Yeah.
And we were talking about Iowa, and he said he came down here, and he's like, "Hey man, I'll send you some of the points and stuff that I hunted," and just being a nice guy. And I was just like, no, just save your points, dude. Like, I don't want anyone's, you know what I mean? But I don't know. I don't know if you're the same way when it comes to that.
Yeah, I don't want,
sure
well, the thing is, I don't want anybody telling me where they hunt, because then I feel like I'm not allowed to go there. Yep. Or I don't want to go there because they're there. Yep. And if I happen to come across a place that somebody else is hunting, like I found it on my own, it's its own thing, versus someone tells me that, I'm like, I'm not going to do that. Like, I'm not going to go to someone else's spot, right. So to speak. Yep. And that's where I struggle with that. I'd rather people leave all that information out, as far as like, if they're telling me about like where they're hunting or doing, like, I don't want to know, because then that automatically crosses that off from a place that I can go to.
No, for sure. Yeah. That's the same way for me.
Yeah. Well, anyways, Curtis, for somebody that doesn't like to talk on the podcast, I feel like you opened up on here and talked pretty good. So
a little bit, I mean, at first it was a little shaky, but I'm all right now. Now.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on. I really do appreciate it and taking the time out of your day to do that. And I'm excited to see how the rest of your season goes as we text back and forth as far as scouting goes, because I'm going to be hitting it hard. Yeah, only got one March of 2023. I like that.
Yep, same here, dude. I mean, I look forward to seeing what you get going on over in Pennsylvania there, and I mean, I appreciate you having me on the podcast, even though I didn't want to do it really, but I appreciate you having me on. I respect you a lot, so I appreciate it.
That's mutual. And so, do you have a new film coming out soon?
Yeah. So I got a video coming out on my 2021 Minnesota buck that I killed. I came down here for I was living in Wisconsin at the time. I came here for 7 days and ended up shooting them on the last day. That one's coming out soon. I'm in the process of editing it yet. And that'll be on our YouTube channel. And then we got quite a few videos coming too that are going to be pretty good. So
awesome. Yeah. So everybody check out Behind the Bow, YouTube, Instagram, all of those places. Or anywhere else that you want to direct anybody to check out?
YouTube and Instagram's good. Yeah.
Cool. All right. I'll put the links in the show notes there. But yeah, again, thanks for coming on, buddy.
Yep. Thanks a lot, Beau.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of East Meets West Hunt with your host, Beau Martonik. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit eastmeetswesthunt.com, Facebook at East Meets West Outdoors, and Instagram at East Meets West Hunt. If you enjoyed today's episode, please review and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.